Welcome back, everyone, to the BioInsights podcast, where science meets performance and the innovation drives human potential. Today, we have Dr. Michael Debord. He's helped over 30,000 people transform their training, and he's not stopping anytime soon. His goal is to try to reach 1 million people. And after really rediscovering strength and vitality through blood flow restriction, you'll hear us say BFR during the podcast. He's committed to daily working out with it. As you see, he has them on. He does about 20 minutes a day, light dumbbell work, light band work, body weight work. His mission is really to democratize access to science-backed training methods that we're going to talk about today for every age, everybody, every lifestyle. Whether you're a PT, athletic trainer, consumer, or a gym bro that uses my podcast or uses content out there on technology, I really think that this is meaningful information. So get ready to hear exactly where I think the future of training for fitness, therapy, and aging is going today. Dr. Debord, I'm just going to say Mike, because obviously we're always on first name basis. So Mike, to get us started, why does BFR work with such light weights, and is it safe?
Great question, because we think heavy weights is the only way to grow muscle. Well, it does. But why does it grow muscle? It grows muscle because you produce lactic acid. And lactic acid is a trigger for your anabolic pathway. You see, it's a hormonal thing. It's not a weight thing. We've always used heavy weights. Well, what if there was a way to not use heavy weights? Well, everybody knows you can't lift light weights and feel the burn. Well, we got a new technology that's doing that. And it actually allows you to produce more lactic acid and more growth hormone than traditional workouts. And we're going to dive into that. And it's completely safe. Millions of people doing it around the world. You know, Marcelo said, I'm out now at over 60,000 people using it. And we have safety studies on it. But LeBron's doing it. Mark Wahlberg's doing it. Thor, God of Thunder from the Avenger movies, doing it. Alcaraz, #1 tennis player, is doing it. We got senior citizen centers doing it. It's an exciting scientific breakthrough that we're going to dive into.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, you're talking about the hormone responses. How can BFR help in fat loss and those hormone responses? Is it hype? Is it real? Like you've talked about studies. Can you give us some of the results that a person should expect within like a 30-day period, just committing to using something like this?
Well, Marcelo, what would happen if our audience went out and did 30 minutes of cardio for a month on the treadmill, right? But then the next month, they're going to juice and they're going to stick themselves full of growth hormone. You all know what would happen. The exercise would like effects. Why do athletes use it? Why does a big part of our baby boomers use it? Because elevated growth hormone elevates metabolism, builds muscle, makes you younger, the whole gamut. Well, you've got access to your own growth hormone, right? So if you could access growth hormone like you're juicing with synthetic growth hormone, easy exercise would get a whole different level of results. And that's what we're going to talk about. And the science is clear. When you do BFR, you elevate the anabolic pathway. You turn on higher metabolism. So ladies, you're going to get about 600 to 800 more calories a day. Men, close to 1,000. And turns on the thyroid. Turns on IGF-1 out of your liver for building muscle. Got to eat your protein. But it does things like improves bone density, improves brain health, like growth hormone does for all the people that take it. So, I mean, just think, what if I could elevate my growth hormone like I was juicing or like I was doing super high intensity exercise at an Olympic level? A lot of things would change in a positive way.
What are some BFR protocols for the athletes that you see using this in season or off season?
Well, if we could start with what is BFR, if I could spend about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So you have oxygen flowing in via the artery and deoxygenated blood going back to the heart. When you exercise, what are you using? You're using oxygen, right? Now, you know the difference between walking around the track and running the stadium stairs. The walking around the track, you're using oxygen at a 6. Running the stadium stairs, you're using oxygen at an 11. You know the difference between 5-pound light little dumbbells and grabbing big dumbbells, right? When you grab big dumbbells, the load is so heavy that there's not enough oxygen. You actually recruit fast twitch muscles. But what if the walking around the track and the light dumbbells could have a different effect? Well, you'd have to use more oxygen. Well, what do the altitude trainers do? They put the altitude training mask on to reduce oxygen. What if we put the altitude training mask on the muscle? Now, that's not actually what you do, but just think about it. How could we do that? How could we reduce oxygen into the muscle? Well, it's flowing in and flowing out. Now, we don't want to mess with the inflow. That's dangerous. We want to stay away from the artery. And you want to make sure when you use a band, you use one that's not going to do that, like some of these cheap Amazon straps, right?
Glad you brought that up. Yeah.
If we simply take this outflow, everybody check this out, and slow it down. That's all. Slow it down by putting a little pressure right here in a real specific spot. You lower the flow in and out. Just slow it down. No change here. It's safe. No change here. We got the studies. So now the oxygen isn't a 10. The oxygen's a 5. Let's go back to our exercise. When oxygen's flowing at a 10, we got to go to an 11. But hey, what if we go to a 6? Well, not much happens. Look where you're at. You're down here. You're like Forrest Gump going for a run. You just keep running and running, right? But if Forrest would have ran the stadium stairs, he'd have been done in 5 minutes. Well, we cut the oxygen in half. Look at that. 6 is now the new 11. And you felt it, Marcelo. You're doing a 6 exercise, and it feels like 11. And here's the wild part. You change like you did in 11, but you don't feel sore like you did in 11. So you recover faster, and you do dramatically less work. I mean, that in my opinion, is the greatest biohack that I've seen in my lifetime for tapping into your anabolic pathway. So in short, put bands on your arms and legs. You pump them up with air. We might do a demonstration. Slow down the flow, not cut it off. Slow it down. You got less oxygen. Now a light exercise, walking, elliptical, 5-pound dumbbells, yoga, swimming. They're waterproof. Some of our simple leg movements, Tai Chi, now feels like you're lifting heavy weights.
Yeah, the occlusion that you're talking to, it just hits the venous system and the arterial system. That's to be a little bit more, I'm using the proper terms for some other people in the audience. So a protocol that I've read a lot of the research that you guys have on the site itself as well. So anyone that's hearing this, I'll make sure to link the website and the references for everyone to take a look, because that was the one thing that I value. Anyone that I bring on a podcast, it's evidence-based, it's research-based. And I've personally used it, and I've tried a lot of different bands. So you referred to some of the bands that, they're not safe in some cases. Those are the dangerous ones where you hear all the negatives about BFR, which really there's not that many. People are worried about, maybe that you're restricting the blood flow going back to the heart. And that's, the danger of having the improper band or having it too tight or having that nerve feeling of burning in your arm or leg. It's not really the case with the B3 bands. I've tried probably 4 brands out there, and I'm usually very skeptical, but this is by far the most comfortablest band that I've been able to use. A user that is going to make an investment like this, there are different size bands. How do people select those bands? And then I know there's a specific requirement of pressure. If maybe you could talk about that the science behind that.
Yeah. So the bands come in 4 sizes. There's a size chart right on the shopping cart, right? It's going to fit, all sizes of arms from 10 inches up to 24 inches, right? And legs, same thing. What Marcelo's talking about here is you don't want to use something that feels like a blood pressure cuff, rigid, like a nylon or a strap, because what's a blood pressure cuff do? It squeezes all the way through to cut off the artery. This is semi-flexible. It's not wide. It's multiple air chamber. We're not trying to push any deeper than right here. The major vein's here. We're just kind of stepping on the garden hose a little bit. And we're not even squeezing the arm, making it feel like a tourniquet, because we got multiple air chambers. This is why We're the number one band in this patent. Now look how easy this is. I just slide it up. Okay. I snug it down. Right here's the valve. You got a little pump. You just click it on, pump, 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 and you're ready to go. And the number to pump up to is right on the band.
So for athletes, do you do this throughout all the programming? Can you just periodically mix it into your periodization? Do you have to do all the movements? Could you just benefit by doing 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here? My personal opinion, I've had an opportunity of taking a glimpse in this with major D1 programs and pro programs. I know you have. I know you've worked with some of these reputable Olympic programs as well. The modalities are really interesting. I've seen it applied in warm-ups. I've seen it applied for aerobic exercise. I personally have been on it for the last 10 weeks, two 20-minute sessions a week, and I'm doing about 30 to 40% of my 1RM, and I follow the 30, 15, 15, 15 protocol. I know you have other protocols, and that's maybe something that you could share with us as well. But the goal is exactly what you're talking about, is to induce that hypoxic state, the fatigue state that you're talking about, that burning sensation, right? And to be able to endure that. Easier said than done, but the gold is in there. So if anyone that is familiar with this, I know in the athletic training community, I know in the physical therapy community, this is gold. Because one, you only have very little time with patients, or you have an athlete that needs to return to play. How does BFR affect the tendon and ligament health in chronic injury? Because I think that's something that people need to understand.
Yeah, whenever there's injury, think arthritis, tendonitis, disc, anything. One of the major components of an injury is loss of effective blood flow. Okay, so now you don't have good blood flow into your knee or your tendon or your rotator cuff or your repaired Achilles or your torn pec or your pulled disc, right, or your elbow tendonitis. And that is one of the major components. If there's not good blood flow, there's not good oxygen and nutrients. So that sets the tissue up, for continued irritation, and it tends not to heal. Now, what do we do as health pros? We do all these techniques to bring blood flow, dry needling, bring energy, ART, released tension, scraping, stretching, heat, EMF, all these electrical modalities are trying to bring the healing energy. Well, they're trying to bring the blood flow back into the joint. Well, you have a circulation system in your body that is enhanced by nitric oxide. So if you can do the type of exercise, for example, rotator cuff tendonitis, that's required for nitric oxide, you could bring blood flow. Here's the problem. You got tendonitis. You can't do the required exercise. You're doing rehab. It's almost like movement. When you do rehab, you don't feel the pump and the burn like you're in the gym cranking out lat raises. But if you add BFR, you're dramatically reducing the load. So I've got bad shoulders, but I can lift 5-pound dumbbells here. Doesn't hurt. Now, if I didn't have the bands, I'd be here all day. But because if I got the bands on, I'm like 6, 7 in. I'm like, oh, there's the burn. Like I'm lifting heavy weights. As soon as you feel the burn, you're already in nitric oxide. Your body is rushing blood flow into that tissue and everywhere else. So it'll be into your brain and your heart. That's what nitric oxide does. It thins the blood and vasodilates. So now you got better blood flow for healing. The second thing that's required for a tendon is mechanical tension or load. Well, if it's irritated and damaged, you can't load. But if you're using BFR, you can create that contraction and relaxation that creates the mechanical tension. Now you got the blood flow. Now you got the mechanical tension, and you're getting the fatigue required to produce growth hormone for the healing. Buddy of mine, Rick Burkholder, Kansas City Chiefs, does BFR on every single one of his guys that they do scraping, ART. He's got all the tools, and he's not going to change his tools and his techniques. But here's what he does. He does BFR first. So he'll warm up a joint or a tendon or a quad or an Achilles with a little BFR, get the burn probably for 30 seconds. And then he'll go in and he'll do his dry needling and all his techniques. And he called me and he said, I'm no longer mitigating things through the season. I'm fixing things in 2 or 3 sessions that would never go away. Why? Because I can use nitric oxide via BFR to pre-fatigue a joint, and then I can go in and get the fatigue with the BFR, or I can do my dry needling. And he said the results are unbelievable. And if you take it, there was a recent survey of physical therapists, and 98% of these physical therapists surveyed said absolute game changer. It has moved us forward light years. Now, here's what's great, health pros and trainers and workout athletes. You're not changing the lift. You're not changing the performance move. You're not changing the speed ladder or the medicine ball or the ART or the dry needling. You're simply using BFR as a tool to make the exercise way more efficient, or as a tool to warm up a joint. I got a picture of Alcaraz, the #1 tennis player in the world, right? He's walking off the court with one of these on. What's he doing? He's getting a little quick nitric oxide. He's just wearing it, doing a little this. He's getting nitric oxide in blood to run in and flush out all the wear and tear. Everybody pay attention to Major League Baseball games. Watch when a pitcher comes out. If you look in the dugout, you'll see they're wearing these. They're doing recovery. Because what happens after a tissue's been worked, right? Right? They used to throw ice on it. They're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
They're doing BFR to bring in nitric oxide and blood flow to flush it out and start the healing. It's interesting. Burkholder told me this too. He said the days of ice are coming to a near end. Unless you blow something out, they're not going to take a guy who threw or ran different than pulled muscle and put him in an ice bath. They're actually doing BFR on him now for recovery instead of ice.
Thank you for sharing that, because one of my questions was how soon can you introduce it after surgery? And I've heard people actually introduce it like literally right after. It's like, and just have them move it, because immobility has been the biggest problem, and that's been the biggest challenge. And the picture example is by far what would be like a quick, an athlete's done like a picture or a tennis player. Is it just 5 minutes of exposure with BFR is sufficient? Is there like a specific protocol that you would recommend? Is it just, 2 minutes of just light moving to get that blood flow going?
Yeah, if it's lower body, just get on the bike. Just do a light ride. Feel the burn and go a minute. Gotcha. It's interesting. We've kind of changed protocols too, Marcelo. We'll talk about that, right? About reps.
Yeah.
Rep is kind of a guideline, but the burn is where the change. Yeah. If it's upper body, right, you can just sit here and squeeze ball. You're trying to get nitric oxide. Doesn't matter which muscle. I'm just getting nitric oxide here. Look, here's everything that got worked. I'm just doing this. Oh, my arms are on fire. All this blood's flushing in and out. And then when you take the band off, you get this big reperfusion. It's like a fire hose runs in there. And it takes out all those metabolites of muscle metabolism, brings all the nutrients, keeps the muscle from kind of shutting down. I mean, it's just fascinating. I saw a picture of the Philadelphia Eagles, their Super Bowl year. They have about 20 bikes. After the game, the guys are doing some interviews and stuff, and every one of them's on a bike doing 5 minutes of BFR after the game. So why? They're getting nitric oxide and growth hormone, because after a football game, you're in cortisol. So you're down, your anabolic signal's down here and you're dominated by cortisol. Well, every one of us has the choice. We can flip the signal over in our body to an anabolic signal. I get up every morning and I walk around in the bands. I don't do a workout. I'm just getting a little pump and burn, and it's like, boom, I just got my coffee. It's crazy. Or if I have pain, I recently had a tooth pulled. And my pain was about a 9 after the Novocaine. I just did a wall sit because I want to move. Pain went from a 9 down to a 5, just like that. Opioids and cannabinoids from creating fatigue. Think about it. When you go into fatigue, here's your body's response. I'm going to warm you up. I'm going to improve your blood flow. I'm going to loosen up your joints, right? I'm going to give you adrenaline if you need it, if it's a burst. I'm going to reduce pain. I'm going to heighten your focus of your brain. These are all the things your body does to get you ready for what the demand you're putting on it. So you have this BFR tool for accessing all these systems. And as you said, right, you're using it mainly for your strength
Yeah.
training workouts. But what have you noticed in the 10 weeks you've been doing it?
Well, I've been recovering from a meniscal tear and patellofemoral from running a race, and I'm not only running again pain-free. I've noticed the circulatory, like building up my circulate. It's more of a circulation type of response. Like I've noticed blood flow. I definitely noticed circulatory system development. That's the best way to describe it. It's all the benefits of developing, hypertrophy
Mm-hmm.
through heavy loads, but I don't have to do the heavy loads. I don't have to beat up my joints. I'm not old, but I'm not young either, and I got these wear and tear injuries. So I've noticed that. I've also noticed lean mass gain and less time. So it's like I have a bioimpedance scale. I regularly measure continuous measurements. I notice an improvement in my resting heart rate. So I take a look at things, and I'm curious to apply it outside of the strength training environment. I'm curious to see how many times, how long can you have it on? Like you just shared with us, that you start your days with it. How long can you have those bands on? Most research I read is anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, that a person can have it. Then eventually you want to take it off.
Well, it depends on the type of athlete. And we are actually seeing now shrinking of time. Like I'm teaching 10 minutes now, right? Because here's what we've learned. We're going for the growth hormone. So let's do a reverse mapping here. Where do we get the growth hormone? We get it from circulating lactate. Okay. Where do we get circulating lactate? Well, lactic acid's a slang word. Byproduct of muscle metabolism when you feel the burn is lactate and hydrogen ions. Hydrogen ions create the drop in pH. There's the burn. Lactate. Those are byproducts of glycogen, right? So we want to produce lactate. Now, a little bit of lactate gets cleared in the mitochondria, right? So look at this. 1, 2, 3, bicep, 4, 5, 6. There's the burn. Stop. That's what most people do. And nothing changes. That
Yeah.
little bit of lactate got cleared in an interlactate shuttle in the mitochondria. But what does a bodybuilder do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's the burn. The guy next to him says, okay, now we can start. And they go 20 or 30 more seconds. If they got a grunt scream and somebody's got to help them, that's what they do. The only difference between them and somebody like me who can't do that anymore is they went 20 more seconds. Well, what if their 50-pound for me was 10? I'm using 10 pounders. I've cut off a little bit of oxygen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the burn. Oh, it's 10 pounds. Now I'm just going to count to 30 or 20. 20 seconds. Woo, I'm burning. The lactate is more than can get cleared. It's spilling over into the blood. It's now a transmitting signal. And we know this because we measure our Olympic athletes' lactate, and I've actually started doing it. You can prick the ear like you prick a finger for blood sugar and do the exact same thing and measure lactate. And since I've started measuring, I've measured well over 150, 200 people. They do 4 or 5 minute workouts. Now, here's the key. They get 2 to 3 minutes of burn. They don't get a little. They hang out in the burn, but it's easy. And their blood lactate goes from like 1.0 up to 4, 6, or 10. Like Olympic levels. Crazy. And then sometimes I'll say, go do a normal workout. And then we'll measure them and they're like 1.5. Then we put the bands on and they're like 5.0. Triple the anabolic signal. Why? Because you've got to think now as a clinician, a health pro, a trainer, I'm not chasing load, time, and volume. I'm chasing hormones. And the way I get hormones is with the burn. So I'm chasing the burn. And what you said, Marcelo, is I recover. I'm not beating. I'm not having all the
Yeah.
traditional pitfalls of heavy weight, but I'm getting the burn like I'm crushing it with max weights. Yeah. We hacked into the oxygen. And now, instead of the cortisol stress and potential cardiovascular problems of heavy load, which we all know, you're actually getting improvement in your cardio. Think about that, everyone. Instead of stressing your cardio, you're improving your circulation. It's the complete opposite. And then you start sleeping better. And then fat and muscle goes like this. It's not muscle goes up and fat stays here. Muscle up, fat down. And people are seeing that and they're going, is this right, Dr. Mike? I dropped 2% body fat, went up 4% muscle. Yeah. Yeah, you are all growth hormone. And here's one other way I explain it, Marcelo. Here's how I relate it. I can go in the gym, me and you can go in the gym and we can crush it. There's going to be a price. There's going to be a big price. But we can go get a +5 anabolic signal. We can push all this lactate and get the growth hormone. But we got to take into account there's a cortisol effect. There's a stress effect. Here was me. I'm going in the gym, 30 minutes on the treadmill. I'm 40 minutes in the weights and I'm pushing a +5. Man, I crushed it, but I'm getting a -5 cortisol. What's 5 minus 5, everyone?
Yeah.
A goose egg. I was going nowhere. Now I switch over to BFR. Now I'm somebody that was already training, kind of like you, Marcel. So I'm still getting the same fatigue, but the stress is a 1. What's 5 minus 1? I'm +4 anabolic when I was 0. I flipped the teeter-totter into a massive anabolic signal and got rid of the stress. That is what we are all starting to learn. It's okay when we're 20, but you and I both know, Marcelo, we can't do it in our 40s and 50s like we used to. There's too big a price tag, right?
Well, yeah, if I decide to go back under a squat bar and try to go for, max lifts, I pay the price. I'm out, 5, 6 days, just miserable. Yes, what did I prove? My ego. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't benefit me. Or I can get under there and just get under a light load, 135 pounds on a bar and go at it, and it,
and you get the same
change. Yeah. Same training effect.
So everybody
Noticeable.
Listen to Marcelo's saying, I'm getting the same fatigue. We're not talking sedentary people. We're talking to people who are training. But I've cut the stress out. So now instead of cortisol coming in and interfering with growth hormone in the anabolic system, the growth hormone is the dominant signal. And you break through. It's almost like you go back in time to a point you were at 10, 15 years ago, if you're an old guy like us, and you start feeling and functioning like you did 20 years ago when cortisol wasn't a problem.
Well, it's also equated to being able to, like I said, I was able to run again, and not be concerned about the meniscal tear or the patellofemoral issue, actually feel stronger, actually seeing my split times go down, and not be in pain, that was my goal. It was just, I want to be able to do nothing crazy, 5K, 10K here and there, but be pain-free and be able to challenge myself, because I'm at the point in my life at the aging process. I want to make sure that it's quality of life, but I hold on to what I've worked for, and that I continue this whole process through the aging process, but also push, and be able to push in a way that I know that I'm going to benefit and get more bang for my buck. And speaking to a sports physiologist that I worked with at Ohio State, he was the one who initially got me onto BFR. For him, he was like, it's like he used the metaphor of, it's like bacon. It goes on everything, and it's so good, and I really, it really can apply to everything. The noticeable thing with me too is in the knee that I had issues with, I had atrophy in the quad that was really hard to address. But with the last 10 weeks that I've been doing this treatment with it, I'm starting to get quad development again that I've struggled to get in my leg, in the blood flow, the circulation issue is like that I wasn't aware of it until you actually apply it. So, it by no means it's any easier than a hard workout, the feeling of it, but you have to tolerate it to get the benefit from it. but
Well,
you're
yeah.
not going to get the grind out of your joints.
Yeah. How many people, and I've been around health my whole life, sports chiro. And I'm thinking, as you said that, okay, I practiced for 19 years. I had thousands. When did I hear somebody in the middle edge say I'm back to running and it doesn't hurt and I'm stronger? I've never heard that. When's the last time anybody heard that? Somebody in their middle ages all beat up. I got back to running. I don't have any pain and I'm putting
Yeah.
on muscle.
I'm even biking 20, 30 miles.
You're juiced. I'd say, okay,
Yeah.
what are you juicing on?
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I have a group friend of mine. They're like, dude, you looks like you're really lifting heavy again. And I'm like, no, it's just like I'll show you my workouts, push-ups, walking lunges. They're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I am, like I'm a proponent of you can produce it and get it naturally, go that route.
Mm-hmm.
Before, if there's reasons to do it because your body can't produce it any longer, fine. But under the supervision, get blood tested. I think that's where we're going now today is, but I think the opportunity, because BFR really is relevantly new, right? It's 1998 is just kind of where all the studies started happening. It was
Mm-hmm.
used before. Coincidentally, the history of it, Japanese to begin with, and then slowly, got adopted by the Western world here. How did you find out about BFR? What made you what gave you that aha moment of this is it? This is where I'm going to have to change everything and adopt it.
Well, I got to give the credit to Dr. Jim Stray Gunderson, who's one of the pioneers. He's on the trainer. He was an Olympic doctor and trainer. And he called me from Japan and had found that, they were trying to figure out what the Japanese athletes were doing in certain sports. And Jim, being the scientist he is, dove in, spent some time learning about it. It was called Katsu, and you can still get Katsu. It's the only other one I would use other than ours. More expensive, got some wires, but it was the gold standard. He then was part of the team that brought that to the States. I bought one of the very first sets, but he came over to my house. He's like, dude, I know we're buddies. I know you're beat up. I know and he put the bands on my legs and I'm like, yeah, let's go. How much? You don't need any weight. I'm like, come on, dude, really? He's like, no weight. And I'm like, has this guy lost his mind? And I'm doing air squats going, what is going on? That feels like 400 pounds. And then I get the pump and the burn and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to hurt. And I take them off and I'm like, why do my knees not hurt? Why do I feel like I could go run? He said, yeah, I went and got he said, he starts laughing at me. He says, we're not done. Put the bands on my arms and I got these 10 and my wife's got little pinkies, dumbbells over there, little teeny ones. I'm like, no, pinkies. I'm like, come on, dude. No, grab the pinkies. Here's what happens when you do BFR. So you're like,
Yeah.
I know what that is. I know. How did I get here? How am I doing 2-pound pink dumbbells? And after 3 minutes, my arms are jacked like I just did an arm farm with 30s. And it's a mind blower. And then if you understand, we just cut off the oxygen a little bit. Why does everybody have to altitude train now? Because if you don't, you can't hang with the altitude trainers because they've figured out how to hack. We've now figured out how to hack into working muscles. And I'll tell you this, on the Olympic level, probably 60, 70% of our sports now, if you don't have BFR in your bag, you got no chance. None. Weightlifters are doing it. Why are swimmers breaking records every time? They're all doing BFR. Because the Japanese were doing it, and then Chris Morgan at the USA got us doing it. And now it's not the end all, but if you don't have BFR in your bag,
It's stacking it. That's really what you're doing. You're stacking it with other protocols, so you're not taking away from skill training. You're adding, basically they might do another modality, but it's all stacking. But it's how the athlete also adapts or maladapts to the load, right? So it's good to have so with me, you brought up as my example, I was noticing yes, my sleep did improve. It's improved by almost 23 minutes. It improved. My resting heart rate number went down. My heart rate variability went up because it's better sleep. I've noticed my energy level is improved. I notice my circulation has improved. So these are all the things that, like, for me, it's just refreshing because as you go through the aging process, sometimes, especially when you're beaten up, you feel like, all right, this is part of the aging process. But bullshit. You don't have to accept that process. You could still develop muscle at any age, even bone density. I believe there was some recent research that shows that this actually helps with bone density, correct?
Well, here's what we think. You got to lift heavy weights to increase bone density, or you got to traumatize her really.
Yeah, axial load. Yeah.
That's one way, but that's back up. It's great to reverse map. Okay. Bone density comes from increased activity of bone specific alkaline phosphatase in your liver, which then traces back to growth hormone. So growth hormone goes downstream and it turns on this cascade. One's increased response of bone specific alkaline phosphatase. Okay. Well, where do we get the growth hormone? From the lactate. How do we get the lactate with the heavy weights? Oh, but wait a second. There's a new way to get lactate, BFR. So in these studies out of Japan, this one study, they took these women, trained them for 90 days, okay? And there was a 35 times increase in bone-specific alkaline phosphatase in the ladies doing the BFR. It's, off the chart. What were they doing? Walking. They were walking in the bands. Now, what's the difference? The ladies walking in the bands are feeling the burn. They're producing lactate. Remember what we've learned. You can use heavy weights, but you got to go produce lactate. Heavy weights without lactate ain't going to do anything. But there's downfalls, and most people can't do it. Or we can now use BFR and get lactate. Both pathways are going to go here and turn it on. So this big paradigm shift is, oh my gosh, we don't have to lift heavy weights. Here's another point that I've had a lot of fun with, Marcelo. The meathead, the strength guys, right? The power lifters, right? I was on one this morning because I onboard everybody that gets bands, by the way. We do an hour call with everybody, and this guy was a power lifter. And the traditional way of understanding is we got to lift heavy weights, right? And for probably 4 or 5 years, the big boys would laugh at me, and I get it, right? Then I got Mike Gattone calling me from USA Weightlifting. He heard from Chris Duffin. Chris Duffin's the first man to ever squat and deadlift 1,000 pounds. And actually, I think he talked to Rick Burkholder. But anyways, so for the power lifters, got a question for you. When you lift heavy weight, you're going and getting glycogen out of the X fibers, the glycolic fibers, the ones that are only recruited with the super heavy load. Fast twitch A, fast twitch B, glycolic fibers 2X. It's the big bad boys of the fast twitch fibers. And they use glycogen. So my question was for all these strength guys, okay, so when you're doing a max 80%, 90% of one rep max, and you get to the end, how deep are you in the glycogen tank? And they all go, what are you talking about? I'm like, how much glycogen did you leave? Because you didn't stop because there's no glycogen. You stopped because the weight's getting heavy. And you're starting to shake and do this. What if the 415 was 135? You'd have never got there. You wouldn't use the 135 because you'd be wasting your time. You'd have never gotten the 2X fibers. But if you did, you could keep going. Now, we're going to use 135, and you're going to get in the burn like you're at 415. Which one are you going to be able to go deeper? Which one are you going to hang out in longer? And they all go, oh. I said, if you produce more glycogen producing lactic acid with the lighter weight than the heavy weight, I'm not saying throw the heavy weight out. I'm just saying, what if we bring BFR in and you get more growth hormone, what's going to happen? And they all go, huh. Then Chris Duffin goes and squats and deadlifts 1,000 pounds doing it. Mitchell Hooper, world's strongest man, 2-time reigning. Go type in BFR and Mitchell Hooper. You'll see him using exercise tubing, cranking out BFR. And he says, I do BFR not once in a while. I do BFR every session because it trains my muscles differently in a way that I can't get with heavy weights. Now all the strength training world is coming on board. And again, Marcelo, we aren't throwing out the heavy weights. The typical weightlifter will probably drop off about 30% of his heavy stuff and replace it with 30% of light BFR and get a whole new stimulus they've never been used to. And they all break records. Every one of them calls me back, said I blew my PR out of the water. And I said, yep. And then they get it. Like what you're saying, you're stronger. You're seeing muscle come back, right? But you're not using traditional methods. You're implementing BFR as a tool, and you're hitting a new fatigue you weren't getting with traditional weights.
Well, I couldn't tolerate max lifts or dynamic lifts any longer so I had to actually figure out, okay, 8 to 12 rep ranges to develop strength, but that was still painful. So then how do I get that burn or that intensity factor in my workouts, and then without beating up my joints? And when I reached out after my half marathon that I blew my knee and I had a small accident with, my buddy who's worked at Ohio State, he's worked with many other teams, basically said, you should try BFR. Flash forward, I met you through a colleague that I work with, Dr. Pinchakowski, that basically said, he's like, have you ever done BFR? I'm like, yeah, I've tried it. And I've just had bad experiences with bands. So when I, got to see the science behind it of B3, and then I got to see the quality in bands, the chambers, the individual chambers in that band really make it so unique, because the feel of it is not uncomfortable. Every other band for me was uncomfortable. It felt like I was putting a tourniquet on to either give blood flow, to give blood, or to your point, like when you get that really squeezing blood pressure cuff. I do like being able to control the pressure. So what are some things that you could, like, now that I've been on it, what are some other ways to progress with this? Can I bump up the pressure? Could I use this for cardio? Like you just said, these ladies went for a 30-minute. What are some ways to build or to progress using my cuffs?
Well, I'm going to go back and give all the credit to Jim Stray-Gunderson and Dr. Sato, but here's what I've been able to see and develop. Number one, I've done over 3,000 sessions, over 50,000 people. I mean, we're just at Bishop Gorman. I know you've heard of Bishop Gorman, Marcelo. We just brought on Bishop Gorman out here in Vegas. They're like, oh my, we got to have that. And they're already cranking out state championships, right? So here's what I've seen and learned. There's 3 ways you make this better. 1, get to the burn faster. So think about it. Here's lactic acid, and you're working out, and you're just going to kind of ramp up. And the body's going to go, okay. Think about it. You're trying to stimulate the body, or boom, you're in lactic acid. So look at this ramp up. If you can get in it quicker, that is a stronger stimulus. Here's the secret. Stay in it. And I think that one of the things I've found is 50% of the time in the bands be in the burn. Why? The mitochondria are constantly trying to clear the lactic acid, and it can't get out and get to the brain. So if we keep producing it and the mitochondria can't keep up, we're producing more. So what I teach is to really start maximizing, pay attention to your time, and say, I'm going to be in the burn in an 8-minute workout for 4 minutes. I'm not going to rest long. I'm going to go longer. That's number 2. And number 3, and each time I'm in the burn, I'm going to try and stay in it longer. Because look, I take a 30-second rest, all the lactic acid's clear. The burn goes away like that. What is that? The mitochondria flushes it right now. Which brings up an interesting point, Marcelo. I get this, I'm in lactic acid the next day. No, you're not. That's a myth. There's no such thing as lactic acid the next day. That's a different inflammatory. It's all cleared, or it's all in the blood, right?
Yep.
And then number 3, stay in it longer. And here's the 3 protocols that I think I've kind of zeroed in on. I don't care if you're going to do 30, 40, or 20. Get to the burn and then start counting time. If you're a rookie, go 10, 15 seconds. If you're an elite person, try and stay in the exercise for up to 30 seconds. You're dumping so much in, and then shorten the rest and do it again. Protocol number 2, do some kind of movement where maybe it's not a traditional strength thing, like alternating lunges, burpees, right? Get in the burn, stay in it for a minute. Then take a break and dive back in for a minute. You're producing, that's what we do when I measure it in our workout. Number 3, do like a cardio move. And what I've been seeing from our endurance athletes, the ones that do 4 to 6 minute endurance training, which here's what an endurance athlete does when I study 4 to 6 minutes. Foam, right? The world's going to end, right? Volume. No. And I'll tell you how I get them to do it. But 4 to 6 minutes, 30 seconds in the burn, then staying at 3 to 5. Now, why? Use your science cap, everyone. The mitochondria control the endurance. If we cause mitochondrial adaptation and we have more mature and more mitochondria, every time you go, you produce more energy. So you're not going to be able to take in more oxygen every time you breathe, but let's use the oxygen better. That's called increasing VO2 max. Now, remember this. Here's what I learned thanks to Dr. Jim. The mitochondria have a secondary function of clearing the lactic acid. What's going to happen if you dump lactic acid on it real quick? They're going to go, whoa, we got to change. You're using this fast lactic acid and longer in it to cause the mitochondria to go through a massive adaptation. And it is not small. This is how all the swimmers are blowing out records. They're not training longer. They're hitting this deep, they're putting bands on and hitting this really hard, quick fatigue and forcing mitochondrial adaptation. And every endurance athlete I train, same thing. I'll give you one story. Brent Rumgardner, 3-time 24-hour mountain bike champion. I mean, this dude's the elite. 24 hours. Think about that on a mountain bike, right? Calls me and he says, Mike, he heard it through somebody kind of like you heard it. Mike, I'm training 6 days a week for 6 hours. I start at 9, I put my daughter to bed. I go to 3, I get up 7, take her to work. School, I can't keep doing this. If you can just keep me in the game with BFR, just keep me, man, I'm all for it. I'm like, Brent, are you willing to give it a try? What I suggested, I don't have an event for 6 months, sure. So I said, Brent, I want you to replace 3 6-hour workouts with 15 to 20, because he can go 15 to 20. So put the bands on, get in the burn, and just go. And then go do your normal and come back. Brent, you're going to take off 17 hours of training in a week. And he's just like, you got it. All right. He calls me after the first session. He goes, I've never felt that burn, ever. That was crazy. And then he dives in. He calls me after 8 weeks and he says, Mike, I didn't lose anything. I did not lose a single measurement. He's already at human performance. I wasn't trying to I knew I wanted to give him endurance. He says, how did I put 2 inches on my quads? I said, what are you producing when you're in the burn, Brent? Lactic acid. What's that trigger? Growth hormone. Brent, it's like you're on the bike now, but you're squatting at the same time. He said, I don't have to strength train. And I saved 17 hours. I went, yep. That's BFR, dude. It's go back to what we learned, Marcelo. We get into the burn more efficiently and deeper with less stress. I mean, how could you possibly lose doing that? This is why it's blowing up everywhere. And I go back to Marcelo just said, I'm in my middle ages. I put muscle back on. I'm running again. And I don't have any pain. I've never heard that in a middle-aged guy. They never say I'm out of pain and I'm doing more, putting muscle on, and I'm running again. They all say, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. Think about that. That doesn't happen. Yeah. I mean, when have you heard that happen, Marcelo? A guy our age says, oh, yeah, I'm back doing it again.
Yeah, it's either some hormone replacement or some, treatment that they're doing, but typically I've really enjoyed it. One thing that I think that BFR has opened my eyes to is to the variable like you identified is that you can do more with less. And that's a hard thing to, I think People need to check the ego at the door. It's not the same work. It's not the same approach of a workout. You're not going to move the weight that you're accustomed to moving. That's not a bad thing. You're getting time back, which a lot of people just need to come to grips with.
Yeah.
Once you can do that and then see it over a period of time and then measure it with other variables, I think that's where the benefit is. It's really is the proof's in the pudding. Seeing it over a 10-week period of time, using, like I said, bioimpedance scale for me, my wearables that measure me continuously, the subjective, which, any knee pain, things like, the only other things I stack with this for treatment, for recovery purposes, for me is compression. I have some light compression technology similar to Normatec that I use. I do my cardio. I like doing my 2 runs a week. I walk every day. I throw in a long bike ride in a week. But now I'm kind of wondering, it's like, do I really need to do anything long? Can I just grab the bands and take some time back? But I do like getting out. So that's the one thing, but it complements everything. So it is, to your point, it's a great tool to have, and you can do it anywhere. Body weight elastic bands. I know there's elastic bands that came with my purchase of it as well, and I've used that. It's great. It's on the go. If I'm traveling with it, just I throw it in my luggage. For me, it's been my like you said, a secret weapon. And to see the professionals and to see it with athletic trainers and PTs, they've used it in their standardized progression models. I'm starting to see it posted in videos for ACL rehab, from meniscal treatments, rotator cuff injuries. So it's nice. I think we're going to see more of it in the mainstream, if not already. I've seen it in gym environments. I've seen it in environments where instead of having, individual sections for people to participate, little pod areas where they just put on the bands, their equipment's already laid out for them, some light dumbbells, light band, maybe a TRX strap, and they just have at it, compound movements, and you get your bang for your buck. And to your point, you get the hormonal response. I think that's the two perspectives that I hope the people got from our talk here is there's a physiological response that I think, and there's a mechanical load response. And I think for such a long time, we always looked at the mechanical load because it was a number. And we were driven by that number because it's the carrot and stick response. But we can't throw away the other information, the physiological information that we didn't understand as well as we understand today. The concepts of lactate, the concepts of what goes on in a rep. What's that concept? What's that hormonal response? We were not as aware as we were. And I think that's just a reflection of applied practitioners that were kind of ahead of the time, that then got validated with the research after, and now we're at that point of this is a tool that you're seeing everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see it more and more.
That's interesting because that's kind of what people have said. I remember 6-7 years ago, I was looked at really like I was kind of out there. And the science is kind of caught up with where we're at. Now, I'm not going to take credit for this, right? I've just been able to build on Dr. Sato and Dr. Jim, but where I'll tell you is very few people have seen what I've seen with BFR, just because I've got so many people and I've kind of evolved with it. And it's like you said, we're ahead of the science with BFR right now. Right. I've been saying it for years, short cardio. And now they're coming out saying steady state cardio. It's not what we thought it was. Now it's different if you get on a Peloton and climb and come down and climb, but just steady state cardio. It's not what we thought it was. Overtraining, right? It's not what we thought. There's benefits, but we're seeing these shorter burst type workouts with less stress are really pushing the science in places that we need to pay attention to.
I think if you don't use it, you lose it. So you just can't do one type of intensity. You have to experience that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
One, it maximizes time, as well as you really don't benefit from training because eventually there's a law of diminished returns if you just go out for a walk or if you're just doing low intensity for a long period of time. There's reasons to do it. There's benefits of mentally to do it, but from a recovery standpoint or from if you're trying to improve outcome, you have to have intensity, and
Yeah.
that either happens a couple ways. So
Said. And I tell people, I said, look, if you like that exercise and it's therapeutic and it's social and it's stress relieving, there's huge benefit. But if you think you're going to do light exercise and get physical adaptations, you probably need to rethink it. So should you stop lifting heavy? No. If you love it and it's therapeutic, great. But if you're looking for adaptation, this is where the science is pointing. It's like Marcelo, he's not going on a walk to try and build his quads, right? He's going for a walk because he loves the walking, the movement, right? When he wants to build his quad, right now he's slapping on the BFR bands and he's getting after it with some short sessions of light weight.
yeah, I love stacking it with walking lunges. Right as I get that burn, I'll start doing jump squats.
Yeah.
It is my quads are like, dude, what's going on? It's like but to your point, it's resiliency and durability. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I want to be very durable and I want to be very resilient. So I want to be able to be strong, powerful, yet have the endurance to, if I want to. I still have friends that have younger kids and they're like, oh, he has that old man strength. And I'm like, no, it's just, it's like I know when to tap into it, know when to pull back. There's a reason to be able to drop the hammer effectively, but not hurt yourself, because way too often I see people drop it and then they just are limping 2 or 3 days later. So, I hope people understand it. In applying this, definitely meeting with a professional. And that's what I really like about what you B3 Science is that it offers an opportunity to meet with you, to actually learn about the product, to actually appropriately apply it, understand the contraindications, understand how to take care of your product. That's just that level of services you don't see because people could buy anything, but you want to buy something that's been validated, used by the best. And I really wanted to have this opportunity to share with my community. So I want to thank you for really taking the time to meet with me and to share this information with our community. And I will make sure to put all the links on this as well. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity of having this conversation. And I look forward to hearing from the questions from the community that I'll follow up with you with.
Yes, it was great to be here. Thanks, Marcelo.
Okay, I stopped recording. That went really well. There's a lot of good content there. So what I'll do from this is I will structure